All right, we are live. Okay, so we're going to be talking about our society project. For anybody that tunes in and goes back to the beginning and watches, basically, there's a group of pretty much exactly 30 of us now that are just random people that have met through discussions on the internet that are starting a society project from scratch. We're just creating laws by proposing ideas and voting yes or no on them. And today we're going to be talking about the animal rights side of the society. So I looked at it this morning, and there's exactly 30 of us now, and 12 are vegan. So we are vegan heavy as far as the population goes, but we are not vegan heavy as in there are not more vegans than non-vegans in the group. Let me look at the laws, the current laws. I think we'll go over current laws, and then we'll talk about possible future animal laws, because some people that are not vegan still want protection for like dogs that get beat by their owners and stuff like that, and we don't have anything like that in there. So I'll be curious to go over that with Oliver here. Oh, and for anybody watching, so I'm vegan. I've been vegan 8 years. Michael's vegan. How long have you been vegan, Michael?
Around 4 years.
Okay. And then Oliver here is not. Oliver is close to a carnivore.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, okay. But for anybody that hasn't seen our video, watch our video we did because I would call him an ethical carnivore. Anyways, Oliver has some really good ideas that I like. So anyways, okay, so for our society project, what we have as a group outlawed so far, when it comes to animals, is dehorning of farm animals, hot branding of farm animals, artificial breeding of animals, pet selling, animal racing, animal shows, owning snakes, and selling veal. So let's talk about that almost everybody, vegan and non-vegan, agreed on is hot branding. Oliver, you live in Denmark. Is hot branding outlawed in Denmark?
And I'm not familiar with that, but from what I know, it's at least not standard practice.
Oh, okay. So I guess that one having an alternative of like clipping a tag in the ear is like what I guess would bring people to accept that hot branding shouldn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So you voted yes for outlawing that. Let's imagine somehow nobody ever thought of clipping something in the ear. Would you think it would be reasonable to have that be legal before figuring that out? Like, with the amount of like suffering that probably comes from that, but it's just a one-time thing. Do you think for farmers to keep track of their animals that there's a time and a place where that should have been legal?
I'm not sure. It kind of depends on like how important it is to have like marked the animals in some order. If it's not that important, then I don't see a need. But if it's very important, like certain animals needing life-saving medicine, and then you can't find which animal it is, then I think it would be important. So it's kind of, I don't know in this case.
Okay.
It would depend a lot.
Gotcha. Okay, so I think the first thing we'll talk about, and mostly I'll just have it be a back and forth between you guys, is your main focus that you wanted to discuss was artificial breeding. What's your take on artificial breeding?
My take is that it's not necessarily bad, and there could be a case that could be made that it might be more ethical than normal breeding in some circumstances, and that at the very least it is not so unethical that it should be outlawed.
Gotcha. What do you think, Michael?
Love to hear the reasons.
The reasons are, for instance, I could start by making the case that it in some cases could be better for the animal. First of all, when you have the cow with the bull and they breed, sometimes the bull is so heavy and large that it ends up hurting and damaging the partner. In that case, So therefore, doing artificial insemination would remove that risk from the equation. And many people think that animals are highly uncomfortable during these processes, but the case, from what I've seen of farmers like recording sessions where they do artificial insemination, the animals could just go away from the situation if they felt like they were being hurt or if they were uncomfortable. But that doesn't happen in any of what I've seen. And I've also heard from some farmers that pigs get an orgasm sometimes when they are artificially inseminated. So I have a hard time believing that it's very stressful for the animal and very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think that is likely the case where there are situations where the experience of the animal is like better with artificial insemination than with natural insemination. So we're kind of granting, for the sake of discussion here, that like breeding of animals is going to happen, and we're just deciding which way. Is that kind of, because like I would be against sort of both.
Yeah.
But if we're saying like one has to happen, is that sort of what we're talking about, Carson? Is like
Yeah,
whether...
well, so the only thing that's been outlawed, because we had it on the block to outlaw farming in general, like so animal farming, and then we
Yeah.
had things like artificial breeding, or yeah, artificial breeding, and it did not pass to outlaw farming. So
Mhm.
so right now there can be farms. Hopefully we'll get enough details in to make it to where there's no factory farming, but there can be like regenerative farms. And the artificial breeding is out. So basically, to have a farm, they would let their animals just breed naturally.
All right. So is it Oliver or Olivier?
Oliver.
Oliver. Okay. Would you... So like the way I think about these things is just put it in the human context. So it's like if we were granting that we were going to be allowing the farming of humans, like, and humans were like, maybe they were mentally disabled humans or whatever. Like I see the artificial insemination as like a rights violation. And so that's sort of why I would be against it. It's like, even if it's like, well, it's for their own good, okay, but I'm still violating their right, like the right to their, the right to not be sexually violated is a right that I would grant to all sentient beings. And I think I would value that right more where there's like an experience that would go along with it that's negative. So like a child might grow up to remember the experience and then like have some mental problems or things come out of that. So I would like, that would add on to the rights violation as like a negative experience. So it would be worse because it's rights violation plus like bad experience. But I would still grant the rights violation principle to in that situation. What's your thought on that?
My thoughts on that is that I'd make a distinction between animals like cows and humans, even mentally disabled humans. So I probably wouldn't allow artificial insemination of mentally disabled people.
Why would you make a distinction?
Because I value humans to a much stronger degree than animals. Even if those humans were to, let's even say that those humans were dumber than cows, then I would still value them more.
Why?
Well, there's also a thing I mentioned in my last talk with Carson. Basically, if we were to do like the name of the trade thing, I value the things that are human alike And then there's like a spectrum of it. So the more human-like you are, that probably be like how close you are to a Homo sapiens, like a biological human. The closer you are to that, the more value you get, the more intrinsic value you get. And then beyond a certain threshold, you can fit into the category of humans, and then below that, there are like differing spectrums of where you lie on the moral value scale hierarchy. And I
The
value
close,
cows so low that I don't care that much about them.
when you say the closer you are, do you mean genetically? Do you mean physically? Do you mean mentally?
I mean like in both like appearance wise and like the internal state. So if there was a deer, that wouldn't be very human like, but if there was a deer that could talk, I view language and logical thinking as a human like feature. So that will also rank as human like. So it's a mix between appearance and cognitive abilities.
So like a deformed human who couldn't talk would be ranked lower in your view than like a deer that could talk?
No, because they still fit under the category of humans.
Well, then that's genetic then.
Oh yeah, there's also a part of the genetics. Although genetics are also kind of arbitrary, in the sense that if we, for instance, look at the fossil record and we go from one fossil to the next, and then go on, then we can't distinguish. Then we can't draw a certain line at where the species changed. Like went from Homo erectus to Homo whatever.
Mhm.
But if we skip like many generations at a time, then we can do it. So
Yeah.
yes, it would also be genetics, but it would also be hard to say like an exact line where the genetics fall off.
But it, like, I'm just trying to understand like what forms the basis for why you value someone. Is it like how important are the, like, I've heard three things. There's the genetics, there's the physical appearance, and there's like the language. Was the mental ability or like cognitive experience one, or was it just language?
It was cognitive experience.
Okay. So say those four variables then: genetics, physical appearance, language, and cognitive experience. How would you weight those? Just like like roughly.
I would probably rank appearance first, then cognitive experience second, and I would do like conjunction, include language and cognitive experience in the same thing. So cognitive ability
Okay.
probably.
Okay, gotcha.
So appearance, cognitive ability, and then genetics, appearance, cognitive ability, in that order.
Genetics, appearance, cognitive ability, and so the appearance thing is just basically take a snapshot of every human that exists right now, and it's if you're close to any one of those kind of thing.
Yeah, for instance, I would value like a severely mentally handicapped person over a talking deer. That would be like an example.
Right. So like if somebody was born with a defect that made them look like slightly different, like they had a face that was elongated and like what was missing the fingers on their left hand or something, or they had a big hunchback and they had to walk on the hands and feet, you would value that person less
Less than what?
less than other humans?
Not intrinsically. I have a second thing, which is also like the utility of the being we're talking about. Like, for instance, if there's a house fire, you can save either a person with no legs and arms and a fully functioning person. They both have the same intrinsic value because they're both humans. I value them under the category of humans, but then the question becomes about like utility. Like there's generally more utility to the.
I would agree with you in that case. Yeah. So like you can make a utility case to break ties where you would value being similar. but I'm talking about the intrinsic value, not like the extrinsic value. So if somebody was deformed, would you like, are you based on your criteria? So that's the second most important thing. Why would you not value that less than other humans?
Because beyond a certain very arbitrary threshold, I value things in a category of humans. So in that category, everyone has like equal intrinsic value, but then the question in that house fire example would be utility.
So there's some threshold above which there's sort of equal-ish value, and then below the threshold there's a big like drop off in value. Is that what you're saying?
Then it just becomes a spectrum.
Spectrum.
But it's a it's a large multivariate.
Why wouldn't the deformed person be lower value? I'm not understanding that.
Because for instance, I'm assuming they also have like the same genetics. Like if we're going the genetic route, they would have the genetics of a Homo sapiens. And for me, that's sufficient to qualify them to fit under the category of humans.
Okay. So if it was somebody that looked exactly like a cow but had the genes of a human, you would value them equal to other humans.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like it's not like a weighting of the three different traits. It's sort of like a hierarchy. It's like the genetic is like the top tier, and it's like as long as you have the genes, it overrides everything else.
Maybe I'll have to think about that one a little more. But it's not necessarily like a hierarchy that some trait trumps them all. I would say at least beyond the category of humans, then it becomes like a weighted battle. So it's like the mix between the different things.
Yeah, the thing is, if it's a mix, then you're sort of held to the reductio of like a human that is deformed must be lower in value if it's like contributing to value. If appearance contributes to value, and it's not like a threshold thing where it's like below a certain point there's a huge drop off, or it's not like a hierarchy thing where the genes can override the other ones. If they're all just like weighed into coming up with a number on a spectrum, then like by definition, if you kind of lose one of those traits, or like, so yeah, somebody who's deformed must be a lower value in your view then.
No.
Go ahead.
Because again, like the thing, like a normal deformed person would still fit under the category of humans, and in that category everyone has the same intrinsic value, but beyond that category it becomes like a weighted battle. Yeah, it's a hierarchy.
Okay.
With the things categorizing as humans at the top, and then beyond that it's a weighted battle between the different things.
I don't want to throw off the concentration at all, but I do want to throw out it's almost devil's advocate, but kind of not. If I had to choose between caring more about a society taking care of a severely disfigured person versus a deer that had the intelligence and the ability to talk like a human, I think I still would put the focus on the human, because such a big part of us is wanting to survive. So knowing that our society views our own species a certain way, we can imagine what if we were in any given situation, kind of like a Rawlsian idea of like, okay, one day I could be a millionaire, but one day I could get so disfigured and this thing could happen to me and whatever. And I care so much about my society not viewing me as, oh, you're less than the deer. So just a thought.
Yeah. So that's totally fine, Carson. The thing there is like the trait difference would be whether somebody is included in our society in that case. And right, and so it's like if there was a human that we weren't including in our society for some reason, they would have the same treatment as an animal, let's say. So it's like I would just want that applied equally. So it's like if we can create a society with a subgroup of humans, and that would be a trait difference. But so, and that's not like a moral thing, really. It's like a constructing laws and rules about a society sort of thing. Yeah.
Well, like so I think in a society, so like right now, if I had my way, the U.S. would practically be vegan. I mean, I wouldn't outlaw eating animals, but it would be so almost all factory farming and everything would be gone, and there would be so much protection for animals. People wouldn't have like dog shows or racing or anything like that, and so that would be my ideal society. But if in the U.S. right now, people were legally allowed to farm mentally disabled people, and they could keep breeding them and eating them. And then also all the atrocities that were happening to farm animals were happening. If I were to put my focus somewhere, even if the animals had a higher cognitive ability, my focus would still be on let's fix the human issues first. I think. I don't know if I would necessarily need to fix all the homeless problem in the U.S. before I would want to end factory farming. But if it came down to mentally disabled people that we could say on almost all metrics were lower than the most intelligent animal that was being farmed, I think I would still have a focus for the humans, even though I want it all. So in our society, I probably want way more protection for animals than, say, maybe Oliver would. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate as far as I do care about humans just on any level of what we will describe as a human, because I am one of them.
Would you want to solve, so like if our society is self-contained, like within the USA, let's just say, would you prioritize solving a problem for some random island in the Philippines, a human rights issue, over solving an animal rights issue somewhere else in the world?
Ooh, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, if we were to pinpoint exactly what was happening, like if there was a country that was hanging animals up by their feet and just slow torturing them, and it was like on crazy mass, and then some other country had like 10 humans being treated badly, I think I would say we need to go and tell this group of people you can't slow torture this millions of animals before I would go into the other country. But yeah, like a country has to invade another country if you have a situation like World War II and Nazis and Jews. So yeah, it would just depend. I think I would care more about my own society to a certain level. Like,
for sure,
like there aren't people in the U.S. for like we aren't marching over to Islamic countries to force people to stop circumcising little girls, when that's a huge deal. Like we probably, I don't know how you would intervene on something like that, but so yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just trying to like separate the difference between like thinking about humans within our society and then animals that are sort of disconnected, like adjacent to our society, and I'm trying to just put that into like animals and humans who are outside of our society to see if there was a difference there. But yeah, I think I agree with you, Oliver. Would you agree that like prioritizing our own society, like I don't see an issue with prioritizing your own society, probably to some threshold of like injustice or rights violation or pain or something?
Yeah, sure. That's also kind of what's happening nowadays.
Yeah,
like you said.
Yeah. So I don't know, like I'm happy to like to continue down this name the trait style thing that we're doing right now. I would have more questions there. If you want us to just like sort of skip past that, though, we probably can. The only thing is like my arguments are going to come down, like are going to be from that perspective. So if we don't,
Yeah.
if we don't,
Well, there was a part where Oliver said he wanted to think more on a certain topic. So maybe we should. Maybe this is a good point to switch over to another one, and then you
I
guys
think
can.
the think more was just about how you would kind of calculate the weighting between those different traits that you brought up, and just so if you're going to think more about that, I would literally like graph it out of just like, you know, if this dropped, like how much would one of those things have to drop for you to consider it like not morally relevant, or morally relevant to the extent that an animal is in your view. So like that's sort of like the examples that I would try to tease out is like, you know, what if it was an alien or a non-human species that otherwise looked and functioned very similar to a human? So that's like the top hierarchy one genetically, but then it has all the other traits. So like, and then other combinations of those examples, that's sort of what I would try to, that's where I would go with the conversation. So if you can want to do that on your own and then like let me know in a separate conversation how that played out, I'd be curious to hear that.
I'm fine with whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's go. Something interesting happened. So we outlawed pet selling, and we outlawed the owning of snakes, but we did not outlaw owning birds or owning cats. I thought that was really interesting. That I don't know if I guess I kind of view birds and snakes equally as far as they're contained to a small area that they probably don't want to be, where cats and dogs and some others can run around, and so that throws me off. But everybody's okay with the oh, actually Oliver's not. So Oliver, so the pet selling, you think pet selling should exist? Are there any animals that are currently pets in Denmark, or like if you're aware of like the U.S. and Canada laws there? Are there any animals that you think shouldn't be owned, or are there animals that aren't owned as pets that you think like should be, if somebody could afford to own a tiger and train it? Do you view any reason to own or not own an animal?
My intuition would say no. I mean, I kind of see the thing you brought up with like snakes and some animals having being stuck in tiny cages. Might be something I have to think about, but my intuition doesn't really tell me that I like particularly care about it.
Okay. Do you care about? Let's just talk about treatment then. So let's just take something like dogs. What things would you say that if it was caught on camera that an owner was doing to their dog would make it to where that owner gets in trouble, whether it's a fine or jail time or something, and the dog gets removed, and maybe they're legally not allowed to own dogs anymore?
I would say unnecessary physical abuse would be one. Like just mindlessly torturing your own dog.
Okay.
Would be one.
What do you mean by unnecessary?
Unnecessary. I mean, it would be like in the case that there's like a hypothetical where you have to save your family by breaking one of your dog's legs. Then I would be fine with it. So it's mainly to get around like some hypothetical. But I would say in almost all cases where a dog is harmed by their owner, it's almost always unnecessary.
I'd totally okay, well, what about like leaving your dog at home all day while you're at work?
I wouldn't say that's wrong.
What if it was leaving them like for 2 days while you were at work?
Maybe. It would kind of depend if they were maybe lacking food or water during that period. Then I would.
Okay. What if you had like a food and water dispenser system, but just provided no entertainment for them for like a week straight?
Hmm. Um, I'll probably be around 50-50 there. I'm not quite sure. I would probably be agnostic at the 1 week mark. Yeah.
So like the quality of life at some point would start to factor in.
Yeah.
Okay.
What if, since we were talking about artificial breeding earlier, what if you have a large dog that you sedate and you make sure when you have sex with this dog, it's going to feel less pain than a dog having natural sex with another dog or being artificially bred for like pet stores?
I mean, I'm kind of against that kind of stuff, just as a like pure principle wise.
Would you think it should be
Bestiality.
legally? Would you treat it in a legal way, or would you just think that it's people you wouldn't hang out with that would do that?
I mean, I would definitely say the second one. The first one, whether it would be a legal problem, that'll probably also be a point I'll have to think more about.
Okay.
Um,
Michael, if somebody had a dog, big dog, and it like bit onto your leg and it's not letting go, but it's on your leg. It's not hitting any veins that matter or arteries or anything. But you're scared. You have a knife. Since the dog's doing something violent to you, can you go to the level of taking its life?
Like to me, it's the same thing in the human context, very similar at least, where if I was attacked, I think I would want to err on the side of like allowing someone to defend themselves. I think like definitely morally it would be better to stop the dog with the minimum amount of force possible, but legally
Mm.
um, I would like I would want to I would not want to like punish that person for like going further than they had to within, certainly some like wiggle room. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's complicated because one
So
issue
like
with
legally,
owning it.
like the way I would want a judge to like evaluate that situation is like, what did this person act um, reasonably, like with the goal of kind of get protecting themselves with the minimum amount of force, given imperfect information.
Mm. Yeah, well, and it's tricky. Let's look at something where you in a sense really can't know what the outcome would have been. You're at a park and a pit bull starts running at you and you have a gun. Can
Mhm.
you shoot it because you know pit bulls in the past have killed humans and can kill humans? Um, do you have to wait until a violent act or physical contact has happened?
Hmm. I'm not sure.
What if you had a baby?
I don't think it would change if I had a baby or
Okay,
if it was just me, like illegally at least.
gotcha.
Uh, I'm thinking like somebody running aggressively towards you with a gun would be a similar kind of thing. It's like
Mm.
you have uncertainty about the situation. Like, what would we want to allow in that? I don't really know. Um,
Hmm.
do we need to wait for violence? How big does the threat have to be? How certain do we have to be that there's going to be harm to you? Yeah, there would be some threshold of like how likely the harm is, and then some other threshold for like how much we want to allow um, people's like uncertainty about that um, to be allowed as well, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah. But yeah, because it
Yeah.
kind of sucks because like a dog can't communicate, but we choose to own them and have them be pets, and we can do that pretty well 99% of the time. They have fun with us, we have fun with them, but risking it attacking and killing you or a small child doesn't seem fair. But killing something that might just be running up to lick you in the face doesn't seem fair. I lean towards that one. I lean towards the same, whether it's a person or dog or whatever. If it's coming at you and it's not listening, most humans would stop unless they want to get shot. A dog won't stop even if it wants to lick you. So the dog's put in a situation it never should have had to be in, which is being at this public park off a leash. But you want dogs to be able to run around and have fun and play with each other. I don't know in Canada or Denmark if there's dog parks where they play outside with each other, but we got a bit of that here. Yeah, it's tricky. Oliver, what do you think? You're at a park, pit bull's running at you. You have a gun. You can shoot it, right?
I'll probably not shoot it.
But legally, could you?
Oh, legally.
Or would you want, like in our society, this society project, would you want people to be able to shoot a large dog that's charging at them?
I would probably, maybe I would apply like the precautionary principle, because there could be lots of reasons for a dog running to you other than to hurt you necessarily. It would also, I think it would depend on the circumstance. Maybe if that dog was known to aggress and maybe already bit another person 5 seconds ago, then decided to chase you, then maybe it would be justified in that case. But I always say, like, if it's going to bite your leg and you have a gun, if it gets out of hand, you can always shoot it after, and then you will have a bite mark.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, it's tricky. Well, and that's exactly why I think it's tricky when you have a kid or not. If and especially with the natural instinct to want to take care of your kid. If you have a baby in a stroller or something, you can stand in front of it, obviously. But if the dog got to the baby, it's all over. Where if a dog got to you, you could try to fight it off, and you might be left with some blood and some marks. But I feel like I could punch a pit bull in the face. But I don't know if I can make it let go of my baby. So yeah, it's tricky. But yeah, let's hop over to Veal real quick. So Oliver's only been a senator in the Society Project for a short while and has only voted on the first round of things. But Oliver, we did a round, which I'll send to you soon, on veal. And we outlawed the selling of veal, but obviously any of these laws can be overturned. But I think this one might be one that you would be in favor of, because when we talked, I think you were against a lot of factory farm processes, and you liked the idea of regenerative farms. So when it comes to the idea of removing a calf to save the milk for us humans, that is whatever that is. We can talk about what you think of that later. But when for veal, they take the calf. If it's a boy, they put it they tie it up in a small area where it can't move, because what people like about the taste of veal is that the calf doesn't get muscles, I think is what it is. I haven't looked it up in a while, but so they stay in one spot. They kind of get starved a bit, and then they just get killed, and that's what veal is. Would you want that practice to be outlawed?
Probably not, but it will also depend on some things. Like, it could be that resource-wise, it would maybe be more effective in, like, if we were to look at global food security. I think they're slaughtered at 7 months, and the question is, like, how much meat does it produce versus how much feed do we give it, compared to a fully grown cow that we slaughter. Like, how much feed has it eaten and how much food does it provide. So it will probably come down to that. I haven't looked at the numbers on that. But
Gotcha.
Why did those
okay.
things matter?
I mean, that would also drive into like the ethics of it. The more it contributes to global food security, the more ethical it is, because then basically the thing about it is the more if it's better for global food security, let's just take that. Then it would then you could replace some crops that we grow today with that animal food. And if it's worse for global food security, then you would need to increase crop production because it eats that many human edible crops. And I would say croplands are definitely like where most of the unethical things happen. So yeah, so that would be one of the things counting into
You say croplands are where most of the unethical things happen. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I would say that's probably where most animals die.
I thought
Okay.
now I thought your main reasoning for that was the birds and the pesticides. And earlier you were saying that maybe you're unsure about that. Would you say even if you remove the birds completely, that you think most and let's say insects. Let's remove insects. Not that you have to, but let's just say if I remove birds and insects, are you saying that most animals die in crops after removing those two?
After removing birds and insects, at that point it would be more of like an inference thing. Like, do we guess that it kills more animals? I would probably still lean towards it being likely. But I think it's very likely that it still kills more, and it kills more animals than we kill, and that we slaughter cattle yearly. The problem then comes with chicken, because they make up, I think, over 60 billion or something. Like animals die each year from food production. So that kind of makes it a bit more fuzzy, but at least in the case of cattle only, I would say there's a significant reason to believe that croplands still kill more.
You're saying kills more compared to what, like forests? Yeah.
Cattle production.
Okay, not like wildland. You're not like saying if I had an acre of forest versus an acre of cropland, there's more deaths on the cropland. You're saying crops kill more animals than like some other farming practice.
Yeah, I mean, the other point you made, like versus wildland, there would be some that would be more for like a philosophical discussion, I think also. But we can also get into that if you want.
Well, I'm just asking what you mean when you say they kill more.
Yeah, he's saying human farmed animals like cows, pigs, chickens kills less animals, even if you remove birds and insects, than human cropland.
Human farmed animals kills more. Sorry,
less
kills
animals.
less animals than croplands for human food directly.
I would say just croplands in general, but it could also just be for humans directly.
Well, it's very different answers, because in one case we're including the animal food, and in one case we're including only the calorie comparison of, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, sure. We can just take human crops for human food, or primarily for human food.
Okay. I don't know if we want to get into that. But okay, sorry. Okay, I understand what you're saying, at least, though. Sorry.
Is a big part of it that you're factoring in is the argument about like chemical runoff into like the oceans and stuff like that?
That was actually not one of the things I thought, but I thought more about pesticide drift and crop protection services.
Gotcha. Okay, well let's save that for a different talk, because that could be a pretty good one to, share studies beforehand and go over studies.
Just can I just want to get clarity on what the point is. Are you saying that, like, even though we need to grow crops to feed animals, that's still more efficient as far as animal deaths than growing the crops to eat them directly?
That's not entirely what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that in this current paradigm, eating a carnivorous diet would be more ethical than eating a primarily crop-based diet or 100% crop-based diet. It's kind of what I would say, because
Our
the thing is, when we
carnivorous
add more
diet of what?
cattle, for instance, if you were to only eat cattle, it would be more ethical.
Conventionally grown or regeneratively grown, or what? Or does it matter?
It doesn't matter in this case, because we're only looking at this like.
So, like, if I ate only soybeans or only conventionally grown cattle, and there's more soybeans that have to be grown to create a meal's worth of cow for me than a meal's worth of soybeans.
Maybe
are
I
you
have
saying
to
that that's not
rephrase it.
true, or are you saying that even if
No, I think I'll rephrase. So looking at the deaths associated with the production of cattle versus the deaths associated with the production of crops, like all crops versus all cattle, then there would be a reasonable inference to suggest that there are more deaths on the crop side of things, even if you exclude birds and insects.
But when you say crops, you're not including the crops grown for cattle, or you are?
We can do that, but the reason I don't really is because there's not that many pesticides being used on the crops grown for cattle as compared to the ones grown for humans.
Okay, like vegetables or something, you mean?
Yeah, vegetable, fruits, legumes,
Okay.
that stuff.
Okay, so so it's not necessarily a carnivorous diet. It could be a soybean diet or a corn diet or something. If I ate those things, that would also be more ethical.
It's hard to say. The thing I think is the most effective to clear this up, so we don't look at what is the primary driver of this crop production? What's the primary driver of this crop production? Because then it becomes like a discussion like, does animals subsidize like the production of soybeans more than human consumption? And I think that kind of obfuscates the discussion. So I think it's better to look at, does it increase global food security? So basically, if you eat this animal, do you get more out of it than you put into it in human edible food? So if you were to produce these cattle, if you were to remove them, would you need to grow more crops or grow less crops as a result?
No, that isn't a good way to look at it, but maybe we can take this discussion into offline, because I disagree that that is a reasonable way to look at it.
Well, not even just offline. We could just save it for a separate talk. But yeah, let's. Oh, that didn't go through well. I sent a thing, but then it's weird.
Can I actually, before we, at some point before we move on to the next topic, I have just a quick question, sort of related. Just like it's on the topic of like making laws for a society, and for things like some of these things we're talking about, where like, if a dog is running at you, can you shoot it and everything? So it seems weird to make a law where there's like a lot of gray zone and a lot of variables, and like spell out, to the letter of the law, every possible situation and every possible thing. So how do we set standards in that case that are clear in terms of what is expected of the people living in our society? Right? So like, even like there's going to be a million variables and a million different ways something can happen, but we want people to know, like, what am I allowed to do and what am I not allowed to do? And then we want somebody, so it needs to be clear to the person what's expected, and then it also needs to be clear sort of in retrospect when we're evaluating whether that broke the law or not, to a judge or whoever is like sentencing and evaluating whether there was guilt. So it's like in the dog case, like, is the best way to do this to make a law about charging dogs, or is it to say, like, I don't know, to set some thresholds, or like spell out a bunch of examples and then hope that those examples are clear? Like, how do you make laws in weird cases like this?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I know little bits because I watch a lot of like police interaction videos where lawyers will like break down in section whatever of whatever's code 198.3 it says this, and so that there's the detail that goes into laws is pretty crazy. And then one of the most interesting things is case law. So when there's a case and it goes to trial, or if it just goes to judges in like a Supreme Court sense, they will decide, okay, this was legal, and then from that point on, there's a precedent. So if that same thing happens again, then that's how that's covered. I don't know the best way to write this, to write these laws, but I would guess it could be something like that, because how this project works is we just all have to agree. So if we come up with a way to write something and then we vote on it, then that goes through. I'm open to all kinds of ideas, but I think
like, could you have a law that's something like, if you're 90% confident that there's a risk to your life, or 99% confident that there is a risk to your, to a certain threshold of physical health detriment or something, then it is acceptable to kill.
Yeah.
Is like something like that reasonable to write into law?
Well, I don't think you'd be able to write what couldn't be proven. That part might, I mean, you might write it just for clarity, but if you have to have 90% certainty, but you as a human know that you only had 80% certainty, but you did it anyways, certain things would have to be up to the discretion of the person. For example, there was that law that we were voting on recently about can you kill somebody if they're breaking into your house? And so this would not include something like just knocking or looking around the house. It would be breaking a window or trying to break down a door. Now, somebody might feel like, oh, this person might kill me, so I want to shoot them. But somebody else might feel like, oh, this person's coming into my house. I can legally kill them, so I'm going to, and I just want to. We can't know what's in somebody's mind. So if the person that just wants to do it because it's their property, but they don't really feel threatened, I think in my mind, a law might still have to accept that, because we have to accept whatever they say. So the law would just show the range of what's acceptable.
But can the range of what's acceptable be based on like anything other than just like known facts? Can it ever be just like, if you feel your life is threatened and you're 90% confident that it is going to be threatened?
I think it would have to be known fact that would lead any person to feel threatened. So if you say that the fact would have to be that a dog is coming at you, like charging at you, and then somebody shoots a dog and there's camera footage that shows the dog was just sitting and not charging at anybody, then if the law was only that you can kill it if it's charging at you, then that person would be in jail for shooting a dog that was just sitting and lying about it. But if it was coming at you and you just got joy out of shooting dogs and you weren't threatened by it, I think unless it was provable in court, you would have to accept that the law is that if it's coming at you, you can shoot it, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
I would probably say laws have to be, to some degree, interpretive. So there's like a judge hearing the situation and knows different laws and tries to make an evaluated decision based on that, because we can never like reach a non-arbitrary distinction for when something is illegal or is not illegal.
Yeah.
That's sort of
But
what
you
I'm
also
trying to
have
get
to
at.
feel
It's like so I like the ability for a judge to interpret something, but then there has to be some like underlying sort of spirit of what we're trying to achieve written in, and that's what we want to. That's the guidelines we want to give to be known for the people and for the judges, right? Is like,
yeah.
yeah, if you're threatened enough by something, it's okay to kill. But if it doesn't cross that threshold of how threatened you are, then it's not okay to kill. And it's like, how do we describe what that threshold is when it's, you know what I mean? Like, it's sort of weird to write in percent certainty or something into law, but I feel like that would be really helpful for people to know what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I think it's fine to have those like numbers like that in the law to describe what we're calling acceptable. My go-to thought is just like parts of that will always come down to somebody. It's just each individual stating what they felt and why they felt it. So I guess the reason for something like that would be if somebody openly admitted, "Oh, I did this for this reason," and then that could be held against them. But yeah, if you have ideas on how to write it, or even just taking any of the laws that we have currently and like figuring out ways that we can like have a couple paragraph description of what it really means. I like that idea. Yeah. So that's one of my favorite things about this project is I really want it to make me look into laws and find out how laws are written and just learn every process of how this kind of stuff works. But yeah, I'm always open to different ideas. Anybody can send in law proposals and have them as detailed as they want. And yeah.
Because it's like
it's kind of,
there's a million of those kind of questions you can ask, like, and I think the spirit of how I would like with the dog charging thing, it's like, no, I don't think we always want to wait for physical harm to happen before allowing somebody to use violence to prevent that potential harm. But there has to be some minimum threshold of risk that is crossed in order for that to be allowed. And that's I think why I was having trouble like articulating that before, is because I don't know how to do that in a way that's like writable into as a law. And it's like it's sort of easy for me to just like look at something that happened in the past, like a dog charging at a person and them shooting it, and say whether it looked reasonable or not. But there must be a way to articulate that so that it's sort of known to the person holding the gun and making the decision. Like it's useful there too. Right? It's useful for the judge to evaluate it. It's also useful for the person. Like we want to tell the person this is acceptable, this is what's not.
Yeah, you have to feel like in your society what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do. For example, if you saw a dog coming at you and your natural instinct is, I think it could kill me or the person I'm with, I want to shoot it. But if in your society that there's a good chance you're going to go to jail for 10 years if you shoot it, then you might go, well, damn, I'm just going to try to fight this thing off with my bare hands. And and so that's why I think it's important. You shouldn't have to, when defending yourself, you shouldn't have to decide, okay, this is how I'm going to do it because I don't want to risk going to jail. So yeah, that'll be interesting to figure out how to break that down. Maybe that can be a thing that me and you can specifically do. The idea of when can you use lethal force against a dog attack? You could like write down some ideas and shoot it my way, and then we can talk about it. What's one thing? Oh, I was gonna say. Oh yeah, I wanted to bring back something up about the artificial breeding because Oliver made a really good point. I don't think it changes my mind on it, but I want to bring up some disturbing thing that YouTube will probably kick us off for. So Michael, let's say even though we don't think there should be farming of mentally challenged people, let's say that we do have it. So in our society, there's farming of mentally challenged people, and our options are we have males and females that are mentally challenged that are in this regenerative farm that are breeding through what we must view as torturous rape. And then we could separate the males and the females of these mentally challenged people, and then we could, get the sperm, artificially inseminate the females, and then keep reproducing that way and keep farming this regenerative farm like this. Now, I'm not saying that with cows and lambs and other animals that the females are suffering when they have natural reproducing. But if it was like how I just described, what would you say?
Torturous rape. Yeah. That there's always some threshold of like utility or harm that would supersede the rights violation. So yeah, if it was torturous rape, I would definitely accept the artificial insemination rights violation to prevent that torturous harm. 100%. Okay.
And then okay. And what if they were equalized? What if neither was suffering but neither was wanted? And for some reason, naturally, just the mentally challenged males, they use minimal force, but the women just went along with it. And then the same amount of feeling would happen from the artificial. Would you say remove the artificial?
Yes.
Okay. Oliver.
Yeah.
What? So does that part impact you at all? If we watch and see, and it doesn't seem to be a lot of cow and lamb rape, and it just seems like they're just naturally mating, and it doesn't seem to be any suffering, would you say that it's still acceptable to jerk off some cows and put it inside the lady cows?
If we're talking about cows, then yeah.
Why specifically cows?
Because again, I would have more strict rules if humans were involved. Like if for instance, the hypothetical you mentioned, we don't want humans to be farmed, but if they absolutely had to be in this hypothetical, then I would probably need to think more about the rules at the very least regarding that point. But I have a question for Michael. You talk about rights violations. Is this more like a principle thing? Like this action is no matter what a rights violation, and then you might give more or less credence to it depending on the negative outcome or positive outcome of that rights violation. Because what I've heard from some vegans, at least, is that some actions that are usually rights violations don't count as rights violations in certain circumstances. So, for instance, in the example of insects, or like all other predators, that's a good example. So it would normally be a rights violation to kill like a lion, but under the view that lion kills other animals, they view that killing all other predators like lions should not count as a rights violation for some other external reason. Do you have like somewhat the same like thought process, not necessarily killing all other predators, but like making exceptions for rights violations?
Okay, couple questions. So a rights violation, if I took away so a negative rights violation is a protection from something. So it's like you harming me or something. It's or you stopping me from doing something. It's taking away a freedom. And so are there situations where I would evaluate a negative rights violation differently? Probably. Like if I took away Carson's used the example before of like fencing in an area around an animal big enough such that they're very unlikely to want to wander beyond that. So it's like technically, yes, it's a negative rights violation that I'm fencing them in, but that would be worse for an animal that wanted to go outside the fence than one that didn't. So it's a negative rights violation in either case, but it's like much worse in one case than the other. So yes, there's sort of a scale to negative rights violations. And then with the odd order predator thing, yeah, I'm on that. There's a huge precautionary principle that I want to afford to like odd order predators before I would allow that. Like if we would want to be very certain before, similar to how like if there was somebody that that I thought was like killing somebody, I'd want to be, before I like kill them, I'd want to be really damn sure that they're actually harming this other person or something. And like the odd order predator thing, it's just weird because it's like we're killing things that, so odd order predator, for anyone who doesn't know, it just means, so you have like herbivores or something, and then an odd order predator is like the first level is the one who eats the herbivore. Now there's an even order predator, somebody who preys on the animal that eats the herbivore, and so they're technically just defending the herbivore is the view. And so it's like, don't kill them. But then if there's another third order predator that's killing the second order predator, they're preventing the second order predator from preventing the first order predator from eating the herbivore. So it's like, yeah, kill them. So it's like, it's this weird thing that I agree with in theory, but it's like practically rolled out, it's like very muddy. And so on the precautionary principle, I would be very hesitant to ever act on that or regulate based on that or anything like that. Does that answer the question to your satisfaction?
Yeah, I'll just ask one last thing. I didn't think I heard. But it's like, do you ever think there would be exceptions where it's not just that the rights violation doesn't count as much, but where things that it just doesn't count as a rights violation at all, for some reason, like with the odd order predators? Like some vegans don't even view it as a rights violation at any level. Do you do that with some things?
The reason they don't view it as a rights violation is because the animal is violating the right of another being, and you're preventing that by killing them. So it's like it's not a rights violation because it's like self-defense or defense of an innocent, essentially. So it's not like you're applying it differently. It's the same way that they wouldn't view a rights violation as like stopping a murderer from killing an innocent person. So you could still consider it a rights violation, or you couldn't. I don't really care how you define it, but it's like it's either an acceptable rights violation given what's happening, or it's not a rights violation because of what's happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think just to tie that into like the artificial breeding thing, couldn't it also be argued that since artificial breeding is at worst not that much worse than natural breeding, could it also be argued that that's an acceptable rights violation if it's not really that much worse for the cow involved?
You're saying if artificial breeding is worse, but not that much worse than natural?
Yeah, if we're gonna assume that it's worse than natural, but not that much worse, just a tiny bit.
Why would that make me not want to consider it a rights violation? I might be missing the point.
No, it's not that you wouldn't make it. It's not that you wouldn't consider it a rights violation, but that you may consider it an acceptable rights violation because there is some economic advantage for the production of cattle in that case. I think you're against all of cattle farming, so I don't think that argument works for you. But if we're going to assume that,
no, because it's in the same way I wouldn't say that like if there was a big economic advantage to killing a human, I wouldn't. Oh no, now I won't consider it a rights violation. I would still consider that a rights violation.
Okay, so it just boils down to you wouldn't accept animal farming in the first place.
I wouldn't accept farming of any sentient. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, like unless there was like a massive offsetting like requirement or something, like we're all going to die in 10 years if we don't do it or something like that, then I might start considering extreme options like this. Same as like population growth. It's like we would, as a very last resort, we would consider like potentially culling humans, just if we knew that the population growth was going to explode and like result in us all getting wiped out. It would be like a last resort kind of thing. I think of animal farming in a similar kind of way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Just so I have an idea
or
what
yeah,
we can talk about.
Yeah. Like, I mean, your argument about the ethical carnivore thing, it's like I would like to get into that, because it's like, yeah, I see a rights violation of farming animals, but I also see a rights violation in crop protection methods. And so if you have evidence that you believe shows that there's like more rights violations that happen because of eating plants than eating animals, like I would want to see that evidence. It's like, because that's the kind of thing that would change my mind about my positions. I don't think that evidence exists, but I think that that's at least the right place to look for it.
I can say the evidence doesn't exist to like that degree, that level of evidence. I mean, you can make inferences, but I think the main thing I'm going for is at least to make you agnostic regarding the ethics. Like that there's like some doubt in your mind. Like it might be more ethical to eat meat. It might also be more ethical to eat crops. You really don't know. And then the argument can all be of like, how do we feed people? How do we nourish people and stuff like that?
So even if you're agnostic, though, the default should not be to commit a rights violation. So it's like, if I'm agnostic about whether killing somebody is going to be better or worse for people, I should just not kill them. That should be the default.
Oh yeah, but like in this example, in both cases, you're undoubtedly killing a lot of animals.
Well, yeah, I guess you're saying, so by purchasing food, I'm contributing to demand for like crop protection methods that result directly in rights violations and deaths towards animals by eating vegetables. And then by eating cows, I'm contributing to blah 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 by because we're killing cows. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, and you're just agnostic, like regarding which is more ethical than the other.
Yeah, there is I see there as a difference, because one require, I'm thinking this through as I'm talking. So like the difference I'm seeing right now, that the reluctance with me to accept that they're the same, is because one necessarily results in like the deaths of animals. So I could farm vegetables in my backyard with no pesticides or anything, and not or even at like a larger scale, like, or organic farms or whatever. Like I don't, like, if I'm not using pesticides and rodenticides, what's the rights violations there in vegetable farming?
That wouldn't be
okay, so it's just the conventional.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the question would then be like, why don't more vegans grow their own food?
That's a
I don't
great
know if you
question.
grow your own food, but
I don't.
But it would definitely be the easiest way to minimize deaths.
Well, if
I
any
agree.
vegans need cherry tomatoes or strawberries, I have plenty in my backyard. Okay. Yeah, I think there can be a handful of really good conversations that we can set up involving looking at the studies to figure out what the likelihood is of which one causing more violations. But real quick, because we probably got about 10, 15
Can I say one more thing? This isn't
yeah.
an argument. It's just like a quick comment. Yeah, Oliver, like this is something I'm like actively trying to look into in my free time now. I've only become aware of this very recently. And so I know there's like some foods that are better. By better, I mean less rights violations required in order to grow it, and not necessarily even required, but less rights violations committed currently to grow it. I am trying to figure out what those are. It's very difficult to parse through information and find good information on this. So yeah, but I this is a thing that is a concern for me.
I just want to mention this real quick because it's funny, but I don't know necessarily how accurate it is. But Oliver, since you were saying the thing about vegans growing their own food, Contrarian 420 in the chat over here says carnivores should raise their own cattle too. So.
I wouldn't really say yes to that, because the difference is when you like buy cattle versus grow your own cattle. There's not like a huge difference in like the ethical, like, oh, if you were to buy like grass-fed, like regenerative beef versus growing your own
Yeah, like grow your
beef.
own versus buying factory farm beef.
Yeah, I mean that would only be the case if I really cared about the ethics. That one, I don't think I agree with like your introduction of me. I'm not really an ethical carnivore.
I was thinking that you had told me you were against factory farming and that you wanted just regenerative farming, and I thought it was for ethical reasons, but maybe I remembered that wrong.
If I said that, I don't agree with that. But what I agree with is that the practices are not good, but I would still allow it because that's the way to feed people with meat, and I view meat as like a health food. And that's basically where. But if we have like two diets that are equal in like health, and one is more ethical than the other, then I would say it's morally reprehensible to eat the more unethical diet if they're both equal in nutrition. So for me, nutrition is the highest because the moral value I assign to other animals doesn't really matter that much. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. There are a couple things I want to go over. So one, I'm just curious. So you think it's okay to do?
I want to. Yeah. So if I'm eating an unhealthy, so would you say it's unethical to eat an unhealthy food that causes any sort of suffering?
No.
It's not. Why would you want to choose with two diets of equal nutritional value? Why would you choose the one that causes less suffering? You said it's morally reprehensible to choose between two diets, the one that causes less suffering, right?
Yeah, because you have two very clear choices, and the only thing that's different, like for a fact, they're both equally in health they're both equal in health outcomes, environmental outcomes, whatever it could be. But the only difference was the amount of rights violations entailed by each diet. Then it would be more reprehensible and also just stupid to pick the diet that's more unethical. But like in the case of today, like that would make it a bit different. I mean, there would also be like a multivariate calculation, like how much better does it taste? Like, does one taste extremely awful versus another one like it tastes extremely good? And to what degree is it more unethical? Is like 1,001 rights violation for one of them, or 1,000 straight for the other? Then I wouldn't really care that much if the one with 1,001 rights violations tasted better. Yeah.
Okay, so taste would factor in, but like not a whole lot, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it could also be argued that like taste also contributes to the well-being of humans. So if you could only eat the most tasteless, maybe not just tasteless, but just like foods with bad taste all day, every day, for the rest of your life, you would not have that much well-being compared to if you ate tasty foods.
Yeah. So I mean, it's sort of it's a weird thing to where I was going with the you said the two equal diets, morally reprehensible to choose the less ethical one, all else being equal. And so if you were eating something that provided like negative, net nutritional outcomes, like eating ice cream or something that caused suffering, is that wrong?
No, because it's still a source of sustenance. Like it, for instance,
What if it
you
was like
wanted to
excess calories though? So you're already eating
excess
your daily calories. You just gorged on a pint of ice cream.
I wouldn't say so. Then maybe I wouldn't say it's morally reprehensible in the case I said, but it would still be foolish not to pick the diet that's more ethical if all else is equal. But again, it's like I don't care that much about other animals, so I would probably care more about the well-being or sustenance of people.
But yeah, but so sorry, did you say it was morally reprehensible or not to eat the excess calorie ice cream?
Not.
So
Here,
well,
let me. I got an idea I could just bring forward. So imagine somebody that owns a dog. They have a basement. They hang the dog up by its foot, and they just like torturing it. Now imagine the level they torture it is the same level that a cow feels torture being milked, and to get milk for like ice cream or something like that. And so in both cases, there's going to be pleasure. The psychopath torturing the dog is going to get pleasure from torturing because that must be fun. And then the person eating ice cream gets the dopamine levels from the sugar or whatever. What if those are completely equalized? The same amount of pleasure from taste, no health benefit, and the same amount of pleasure from torturing, and then the same suffering to the cow, same suffering to the dog. Would you say that the torture of the dog hanging upside down should be illegal? Or let's not say illegal, sorry. Let's just say morally reprehensible.
Yeah, because I also intrinsically value dogs more than cows.
Okay, let's say it was a cow in their basement hanging upside down and they were torturing it. Pet cow. Cute one, like a little baby cow.
Okay, so was the suffering induced to the cow in both cases the same?
Yeah, like they're taking a knife or a tack or something, and they're just making it suffer for pure fun because that's how their brain works. They just want to get that joy, and it's the same joy. And let's just say this ice cream has zero health benefit, practically. Let's say as much as zero as you're willing to accept. And they're just eating it for the taste pleasure. And so we have equal suffering of cow in a basement, cow on a farm, and then equal pleasure of ice cream and torture. Are they both morally reprehensible?
I mean, I have a hard time working with like the upside down cow being tortured, because if you're an animal on a farm, you're also like you can eat. It brings pleasure to animals. And there's also other like well-being things, and it's not like you're being directly tortured like someone's
Yeah, so
telling
we're
you. So
just
it's hard to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Like
so we're equalizing it. So this guy takes his cow that he tortures for walks. If he stabs it for the torture pleasure, he sews it up, he heals it, he pets it. Best food possible. We're just equalizing the amount of suffering. So if we could get a number, it's like 8 units of suffering to milk a cow. The rest of its day's pleasure is equal. So however many units it takes of suffering for a cow living on a farm, that's what he would do. He's just doing it in the form of hanging it upside down in his garage and making it suffer with a tack or a knife or something to the equal level of suffering.
I mean, I would probably say
And this farm produces
I would
no
say
products whatsoever that are for any benefit other
then I would
than
probably say
pleasure.
both. Then I would say probably both are morally reprehensible.
Okay.
But that's also assuming like the ice cream has close to zero nutritional value, and it's just purely for pleasure, and it's the same suffering for both cows and the same pleasure given to both humans. So then I would say both are morally reprehensible.
Okay. Cool. Michael, did you have any other thoughts before we try to fit in one more little thing?
Go for it.
Okay, cool. Okay, well, two little things. So I want to ask Oliver one thing and then Michael one thing. So Oliver, do you think it should be illegal to race animals, like doing like horse races or dog races? So we're removing so you can own an animal and have it be your pet as long as you don't abuse it and you treat it well. And you can own animals to sell their meat, to eat them because, we're calling it healthy for you or whatever. So we have those. But can people take animals that might want to live out in the wild and just force them to run in circles for our amusement?
I mean, I would say it's kind of the same thing, the same deal as the pet. Probably like you're taking this animal in, like kind of keeping it as a pet, and then instead of just purely as a pet, it's also used for racing. So I would probably, I mean, if it's the case that you just have a pet that you're also training for racing, then I wouldn't see any problem with it.
Michael, do you want to counter that at all?
Well, it's going to come down to the whole rights violation thing again. Like Oliver's, does your position assume that there's like minimal suffering entailed by racing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see like a significant reason for why it should suffer like immensely.
Yeah. Okay. So one way to talk you out of that would be to convince you that like there is actually a lot of harm that comes to the animal through racing them.
Okay.
Like I'm
give
just
examples.
if I could do that to convince you, yeah, like they break their legs all the time. They're forced to work really hard. They have worse quality lives. Like if I could convince you of those, like enough of those kind of facts, you would change your position on the racing potentially.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that would be one way to go. Like I would more on a principle stance against the rights violation aspect of it. But yeah, I don't have those facts, by the way, Oliver. I know that I've seen them present those facts with horse racing, for example. I don't know about the dog racing information, but yeah, I think that would be if whoever in this society project is advocating for banning racing, those kinds of arguments are the ones that will be most convincing in this case.
There will also be another part of that equation, maybe like whether or not the animal enjoys it, because we know with bodybuilders that like to work out, even if they tear a muscle, which hurts immensely, they still have the drive to come back and work out. So there would also be like a part of that which would factor in. I don't know how you would measure if a cow or if a horse enjoys it.
One of the best metrics would probably be life expectancy. If it cuts their lives in half, then it's probably bad. If it doesn't, then maybe it's not bad.
I mean, bodybuilders also don't really have a long life expectancy. That could also be from drug usage.
Well, true, but should we force animals that we would like view as like pets to be bodybuilders?
Nah.
You know what I'm saying? Like a human could decide to be a bodybuilder and their life expectancy could get cut in half. Football players do. Like they die young and they get brain injuries all the time. But that just because they do it wouldn't mean that if we have standards for abusing animals, that making them do something that would look like a bodybuilder would make that an acceptable standard. But I really don't know. Yeah.
The thing I was saying is just like it would also matter to me if the animal itself enjoyed the endeavor, because if it if the animal enjoyed racing as much as a bodybuilder enjoyed working out, then maybe that the fact that they get injuries, like both of them get injuries, then I'll probably not necessarily say it's unethical. But
Yeah.
there's a bit more to it.
Yeah,
It's hard
no,
to say.
and I think it's worth looking into and interesting. I don't know how we can detect if they enjoy it, other than if they're just allowed to stop whenever they want. But let's see. Phil in the comments says horses that are bred for racing also have much weaker bones, which leads to more breaks. I wonder why they have weaker bones. That's interesting. Okay, so let's. Last thing I want to bring up, Michael. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, and then Oliver, you can counter whatever Michael ends up saying. Somebody, I can't remember who it was, but somebody was saying that we should outlaw factory farming in our society. And I don't think this is a simple thing to word. If we weren't able to outlaw farming in general, which means people would be accepting of regenerative farming, or something like it, just calling something factory farming, I don't think pinpoints anything. So we would have to. The laws would indicate how big of cages, how big of land, and all these different things. Do you think it's as simple as just outlawing what factory farming, or do we have to do individual things? And if your answer is the second thing, then my question to you is, what should be the next law that we propose for outlawing when it comes to farming, similar to how we outlawed the branding and the dehorning and all that kind of stuff?
Sorry, what was the first part of the question?
Do you think it's that we should do something as simple as just voting on outlawing factory farming, or would that just be kind of a silly thing because that we don't know what that's defining, like what farmers can do at that point?
I mean, if I think that it's fine to have a vote for a broader thing, but maybe if we were doing that, we would just define, here's what we mean by factory farming, like this many animals per square foot, or this type of practice. So I think that would be fine as long as we define terms.
Gotcha. And so what do you think the top one would be? Like, what's the first thing that comes to mind that would be kind of specific and simple? Now that we know
I think putting something like that, even in the broad sense, so it's like just creating like an alternative. It's like, this is what we mean by factory farming. This is what we don't mean. If we ban this is what the alternative will default to. And just get a temperature check of the group as to whether or not, like, if it's a landslide in one direction or the other, great, good thing we address this now. And if it's close, it's like, let's figure out, like, what are the things, like, what levers would have to be pulled to move the middle people in one direction or the other. And where would I start? I think if we haven't asked that broader based question yet, I can't remember if we have, but I think that would be a good one to ask. And then if the group is way against banning it, then okay, let's start with more of the more simple, like, welfare things, and like see where the group sits on each of those. I would just want to push it as far as we can.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think that's a good idea. So what is something, even if it's not farming, because we have a handful of things involving pets and different things like that. What's an animal related topic that we haven't voted on yet that you think would be worth voting on?
Putting me on the spot. Sorry.
It's all good.
Well, I think it would be worth voting even on each type of animal.
Okay.
It's like, maybe people are, when we say farming in general, it's too much. But if we start with pigs or something, a lot of people like pigs. I don't know.
Pigs are pretty cool. Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So if we were to put it to a vote saying if we were to figure out how
Actually,
much.
here I have a better one. I have a
Okay,
better
yeah.
one. Government incentives for yeah, for what? I think that would be maybe a good place to start, is like an incentive for behavior that doesn't like harm animals as much, and maybe that's like more palatable for people.
Gotcha.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah, what's up?
If I'm gonna argue for like the animal welfare side, which I actually might, I think it's back to the first question you had for Michael about like outlawing factory farming and how that would happen. I don't think we need to do anything like saying factory farming is outlawed and factory farming is defined by these metrics or these measures. What I think is better is just to say when raising animals, there are some criteria you need to meet. So the animal must at least have 50 square meters to walk around in. For instance, it needs to be able to walk freely. It needs to have at least half a year outside where it can graze or something. I think that would be a better way to set up like a legal system regarding the criteria for production of foods, animal foods.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that's something I want to look into further because I know different countries will have different. I think. Oh, Michael, that video we were listening to with Peter Singer and Alex O'Connor. Peter Singer was talking about the amount of hectares per chicken and however much space they would need, so there would be constant green grass and that kind of thing. I want to look into different countries' laws and that kind of thing, and figure out just how bad certain ones are compared to others. Whenever I bring up the idea of cutting off the pig tails and the pig teeth, people will bring up that that's for their own benefit because if you don't cut them off, they'll cannibalize each other. But they're only going to do that in a small area. So if you have once you reach a certain threshold of space, they won't do that. And therefore, if we find out what that number is, we can say it's illegal. We can vote on if it's illegal to cut off pigtails and pig teeth, but we must have it in place how much land they should have. And I think that's a lot of people's concern with the fact that we outlawed dehorning, but we didn't outlaw factory farming stuff because the cows the horns, they'll like hurt each other. So we need to figure out what space cows need to have to be able to have their horns without hurting each other. And that's a lot of work to look into that kind of stuff. But I think that'd be a fun project to do. So
I can say that I think Denmark actually has a law where chickens are required to be able to walk freely. So I think caged chickens are illegal here. So there
awesome.
are none of that stuff. At least that's what I've heard. I haven't checked the law myself.
Are you personally in favor of that? If some farmers wanted to have them in cages, pump them with hormones, and just let their legs break under them and they stay in their cages, would you say like, no, I won't vote for that? Or would you be accepting of that as well?
Well, I would say if you could grow a more than sufficient amount of animal products without that thing, then I would definitely be in favor of increasing animal welfare. But if you need to put them in cages and lock them up and pump them with hormones, if you want to feed your population, then I would say it's justified. But if not, like, yeah, then it's bad. If there's not really a need to it.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Well, I got to hop off here. I don't know.
I responded to just one quick comment. Just Contrarian 420 was just commenting when you were saying the thing about the two different equal diets. This, I think, comment was related to that. He said it also sounds like if someone could prove that a plant-based diet is healthier or more nutritious than a meat-based diet, Oliver's stance would require him to go plant-based. I don't think that's the case, because I think he wasn't saying if one diet is more, you're obligated to do it. He's saying
I can tell to me that plant-based diet, if you gave me a reasonable inference for why plant-based diets are more healthy, then I would most likely go plant-based
What if I could do it equally?
equally.
Prove that they're
Um,
equal.
Then, I mean, then I would still be agnostic regarding like which one is more unethical. I would probably still lean more towards just eating. Then I would probably just go fully like grass-fed beef eating frenzy.
Well, what if I could prove to you that eating grass-fed beef was unhealthy?
Like directly unhealthy, then I would not eat it. If you
Okay.
prove to me that plant-based diet was more healthy than what I'm doing now, then oh well, not what I'm doing now, but
Have you looked into a lot of the literature on that? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, maybe we could compare notes on that in another chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be great. And I mostly I'd be there to learn while you guys debate. But yeah, you guys could send articles, and I could share each of the studies with you guys, and then we can set up a talk and do separate ones on that. Do one on health, but also do one on the likelihood of animal suffering and death in crop stuff. But yeah, awesome. Well, it was a great talk, guys. I gotta hop off here, but
Cool.
I'll see you guys next time.
Ciao.
Yeah. See you.
All right. Take care.